All right. Well, thank you for this interview and this time. I grew up, was born and reared right here on this farm. It was a tobacco and cotton farm that my parents took care of, and I helped as a little girl. I had two siblings, a brother and a sister. I had another sibling, but he died before I was born, so I didn't know him. I grew up, as I said, grew up right here on this farm. I did not like farming at all because I was much smaller than I am now. Even as a child, I was small, but I was smaller than the rest of my class. And so when I had to pick cotton or do stuff in the fields with the tobacco, I just did not like it and it was too hot. But anyway, nevertheless, most people around at our neighborhood farmed. Um, and growing up on a farm and with my parents, my father was kind of an outspoken type person. We owned this farm, a small farm, only 20 acres, which is extremely small. But my father came here from Cary with his parents when he was 5 years old, where his mother purchased and father purchased this farm. So he was not a sharecropper. My parents were not sharecroppers. My mother lived on a farm about a mile down the road from here, and her mother was a sharecropper because my mother's father died when she was, I think she said she was 2 years old. So then her mother ended up being a sharecropper. So she knew a little bit about sharecropping. My father did not. So when my mother married my father, she moved up here, which was only about a mile from her home. And so, as I said, my parents were considered fairly independent if you compare with other black people who lived in the area. Because either they were sharecroppers or they just worked on a white man's farm, period. So I think that that's why my parents were a little bit more outspoken when it came to racial issues or what they saw as racial injustices. So and I think that because of their attitudes about issues, racial injustices, and their, I guess, their stamina, they just, addressed issues that they thought that didn't appear to be right in the neighborhood or the county, Franklin County, where I live. Louisburg is the county seat, which is about 8 miles from here. And I was born in a little house in the yard from where you all parked. That's where that house was the time I was born. Where this house is right now was either the alternate a cotton field or a tobacco field. That's because you alternated the crops because you didn't have one crop in a field for years and years and years because you had to alternate because they just wouldn't bear the crop if you didn't alternate it. But anyway, as a child growing up, I was telling somebody not long ago, I'm not sure I didn't come from a dysfunctional family because at that time I thought it was a regular family, a regular functioning family. Because there were times when my parents had to speak out on issues such as school segregation or just segregation in general or whatever. And my parents were members of the NAACP, the local branch of the NAACP, which usually met in Louisburg at a church, whatever church, they alternated churches. But anyway, so like I said, with various issues, they would speak out. But I just thought that was just a normal way of life, which I still kind of think was the normal way of life. But there were times when we endured repercussions from their outspokenness or whatever, because like I used to wake up. Well, my father was sick a lot. He was just not a healthy person. And so sometimes people would do things, like put stray dogs in the yard or tie animals to the porch, or which was strange because I don't know why they would tie their own animals, I guess, unless they were just stray animals they found around to our porch, or they would cut the chain or cut the rope of our cows or goats that we had. We had one goat, but we had a couple of cows. We had a mule. Sometimes they would let the mule out. I don't know if y'all know what a mule is, but it's between a horse. Well, I don't know what it is. It's between a horse and a donkey, I guess. Right. Right. So, anyway, they would just do things just to aggravate you. Or my mother went to Henderson and found us a little house, approached Pepsi Cola Company, and they gave us a little house to stand in for my brother and I to go to school. My sister was older. She was 8 years older than I was, and she was 11 years older than my baby brother. So we never went to school at the same time. My brother and I went to school at the same time, but not my sister because she was so much older. And so my mother secured a little house. It was a 3-sided little shed that she had them to bring and put at the intersection down below our house. And then one day, I think we used it about maybe 2 weeks maximum. And then it was just bullet holes. We went down there one day and it was just shot all up. I thought, oh man, it just messed up our house. Now it's going to start raining back. And because if it was a rainy day, or cloudy day, or snowy day, you still had to go to school if it wasn't snowing too badly. But it was just always little things. Well, I don't know if they were little things now, but anyway, things that and we never did find out who did them. We did have a reputation in Franklin County of having them. It was a KKK type county, and they didn't mind putting out signs saying you're entering KKK country. That down below Louisburg, we would see those signs. So it was. I was growing up knowing that I lived in what was considered a Ku Klux Klan county, and so but we were never afraid of them. I wasn't. And I never heard my mother say she was afraid. I never heard my father say he was afraid of the KKK. Because my daddy said, well, I know how to shoot back too, whatever. And then it got to a place that when my brother would go to school, my brother and I would go to school, they wouldn't burn like large crosses. So I'm not sure if it was I'm not sure who it was that was doing these things. They would burn like crosses about as high as I was tall at that time. Well, I'm not much taller than that now, but anyway. And then they would put them in the yard, and they'd be all burned the next day. Or I got to the place that they would be sometimes in the driveway, because we didn't have like a paved driveway. It was just a driveway. And sometimes they'd be smoldering from, being burned. And my brother and I would just, another cross, and we'd kick it on out of the way and walk on down to the intersection and go to school. We had to stand out in the rain again because our house was torn up. And then there was, on a farm, I know you all would know what this is. It was called a slide truck. It had nothing to do with a motor at all, or a regular truck. It was a thing that was not even on wheels, and it was on like boards, and it had burlap bags around it. It was about as long as from David to this bench, and you would the mule would pull it, or a tractor, which we didn't have a tractor. We were too poor to have a tractor, but the mule would pull the slide truck down between the tobacco stalks, and the people who would prime tobacco would put the tobacco in the slide truck. Okay, and then they would bring it to the barn, and then the women usually worked at the barn, and they would wrap the tobacco on sticks. Well, I woke up one morning, and this slide truck was torn up. We didn't have two. One of them was torn up in the yard, and so even though my father was sick, he would try to sit up at night some on a pillow like this, like holding a gun, which I thought that was natural. That was he was supposed to do. And then he died in '63. I was 12. I was to turn 13 the same month that he died. So, and by this time, my sister was away in college in Elizabeth City. And it was just my brother, Jesse, and I, and my mother. So I would sit up at night. So I said, well, who's going to protect the house? And my mother said, well, I don't know. Well, my brother was too young. So, and my dad had taught me how to shoot. So, and taught my sister and I, because like I said, my brother was younger. So since we knew how to shoot, and my sister was gone, so it was up to me. So I thought, well, I got to be the one to protect the house then. And so I would sit up on the sofa in the den. We had a sofa in the den then, and I would sit up holding either a pistol or a rifle. And I'm 13 years old by this time, between 12 and 13, because my dad, I was 12 when he died, but I was 13 in the month. And I would try to sit up, watch for any suspicious activities, and then maybe 7 o'clock in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning, I would lay my weapons down, take my bath, get dressed for school, and go to school. And half the time I would be in school just about to fall out of my chair because I was sleepy, Because sometimes at night, to be frank, I would doze off, but I wasn't supposed to doze off. But anyway, I did. And one night, I heard a gunfire. I had dozed off anyway. But, and that's when someone had shot it's right below my mother's bedroom window, where it hit the bricks. Then it went down the road and shot into my uncle's house, which is my mother's brother. But it was clean, it went clean through his house and missed my cousin and went on out the back door. But they said they never found the bullet, but it must have been, I don't know if it was a rifle or a shotgun blast, but it was I would assume a shotgun because it was like an oval hole through the back door. So, and then they went to Louisburg, whoever. Anyway, I can't say they went, but then there were a couple of ministers' home that was shot in that very, very night. And they were all active members of the NAACP except for my uncle. So I don't really know why he was targeted. And so, but then I felt guilty because I said, oh, I was supposed to be protecting the house. And Mother said, you really can't protect the house. You really can't. You just think you could. And I could not have done anything about it. Once I realized I got a little bit older, I said, there's nothing I could have done about it. But anyway, I was just thankful that my mother didn't get hurt or, anybody got hurt. So, but it was one thing to another, just all of my life. And like I said, that my mother was active in different movements, and I would go along with her, when I could. She was what was it called, a special voter registrar, because they didn't let anybody register you to vote. I think that's another way of the voter suppression. So in a county, you could register to vote in two ways. You could go down to the courthouse. Back in the day, it was a courthouse where you had to register to vote. Everything was in the courthouse, just about. And now you have the Board of Elections. But you would go down to either the courthouse to register to vote, or a special registration commissioner would register you to vote. They probably had about 4 special registration commissioners in the county. I know my mother was one, and she would go out and register people. Now I'm getting older then. I'm in high school this time and in college, and she would go from door to door registering people to vote, and she would have voter registration drives. Well, I couldn't actually sign on a dotted line that, I was, because I wasn't the registration commissioner. But I would assist her. I would help set up the table, and if she was having a drive, or I would go around with her, from door to door, and just do things like that to help her register as many people as she could. And so then when, I can't remember what year they did away with that procedure. So after that, then I just felt free that I could register people freely on my own. So I was real carried away with that and excited that I could go, and some days that would be my activity. I would go and register people. It didn't seem like the world was as small. In a way, it was smaller because you kind of knew the people in your area, and you didn't have a lot of strangers or people moving in, and so you just kind of, you could feel free to go up to somebody's house, and or we didn't have many apartments in this area at that time, but later on they had some elderly apartments, and so you just felt free going to people's homes, talking with them. If somebody that was cooking something, they give you something to eat, and you just have a good time, doing that. So that was sort of like activities I loved to do back when I was growing up.
I have a question about that.
Yes.
Were you in particular trying to register black voters, or was it?
To be frank, yes. Black voters. Because I figured that the white voters could get somebody else to register them. But if I set up a voter registration drive, if we did a drive, then you'd register anybody that came up, whether it was a Republican, Democrat. If you set up a drive, you couldn't turn anybody away. Which I didn't want to turn anybody away if you had a drive, but I just wasn't just going to white people's home necessarily to register them to vote, Yeah. But if they came by, because some of them would come to the house when Mother was a special registration commissioner. If they knew about it, they would come here, and she would register them to vote. So that was no problem.
Okay, so then you went to college at Shaw University.
Well, first of all, I went to college at Durham College. It was Durham Business College at the time. It was right off Fayetteville Street, down from North Carolina Central. And then they later changed, became an accredited junior college. It was Durham College, but at the time I went, it was Durham Business College, when I majored in secretarial science at that time. Then I came home. I lived there on campus then. Then after graduation, after 2 years, I got a job at my old high school, which was Riverside High School. And speaking of Riverside High School, that's the school that I had to go to when I became it was in high school, became high school age. Prior to that, because of segregation, I had to go to the elementary school in Youngsville. Okay, and then high school, Riverside. Then from there, went to college, and then from there came home, got a job at Riverside as a secretary to the principal. Stayed there for about a month, and then I got an offer to go to work with a civil rights organization called the Commission for Racial Justice, and that was the social action arm of the denomination called the United Church of Christ. And so I worked there for 20 years, and I loved every minute of it. It was just great. I got to travel. I got to work with people in prison, work on such things as capital punishment. That was one of my main focuses, that I didn't believe in capital punishment. So, and my boss, he just let me do whatever. But my job when I went there was office manager. But I did probably everything else but manage the office because it was a very small office. And my supervisor, my boss, was Reverend Leon White, and he's from this area. As a matter of fact, my brother was named after him. Because my mother used to say, well, when I have a little boy, I'm going to name him after you. But anyway, so she did. So my brother was named Jesse Leon. And but anyway, so I had a good time, working there. It was very uplifting and just enjoyable. And I got to work with, I don't know if y'all ever heard of him. You should have, though, because he went to Duke. Reverend Benjamin Chavis. Ben Chavis.
Yes, I have.
Right. And he went to Duke Divinity School, I believe. Yeah, I know he did, because he was actually in prison when he went.
He helped free the Wilmington 10, or he was a big part of the Wilmington 10.
He was the leader of the Wilmington 10.
Yeah.
He was
in prison.
Yeah.
With the Wilmington 10. Yeah.
Right. And I worked with him when he went to jail, because I was working with the commission first, and then he came on board a couple of years later, 2 or 3 years later. He's younger than I am. He came later, and when my boss dispatched him to Wilmington to deal with the school situation, the segregation and the riots and stuff that's going on. Out of that is when, he ended up in prison, him and 9 other people, which was my coworker, and we just really, really, really hated that. But once he got to a certain point, then that's how he ended up. Ralph Edwards, a man named Ralph Edwards, allowed him to go to school. Ralph Edwards is right here, that picture right there in that little red frame.
Oh.
Right there, that's Ralph Edwards. He was the director of prisons. And his wife and I are good friends, and right now, and she said that her husband got a lot of flack for allowing Ben to go to school at Duke, but he said he had a feeling about people, and he branched out and let him go. So he would go every morning with prison guards, and he came out. That's how he ended up Dr. Benjamin Chavis. And then when he was hired as the director of the Commission for Racial Justice, and our home office was in New York, so he had to go to New York. And so when he graduated, and he was his ceremony, installation ceremony with the Commission for Racial Justice, he had it at Duke. He wanted us to plan everything. I remember him saying, I want y'all to have plenty of flowers and this and that, except for gladiolas. I don't want gladiolas. I don't know what he has against gladiolas, but anyway. So, when I worked with the Commission for Racial Justice, we got to work with the Joanne Little case. That's how I organized the Concerned Women for Justice. It was a statewide organization, and it was called the Concerned Women for Fairness to Joanne Little. I don't know if you've ever heard of Joanne Little in her case. It was in 1974 that she was accused of killing her jailer, and because she said a jailer raped her. Anyway, he came in with a knife. Anyway, she ended up killing him, so she escaped. But my boss, Reverend White, and a man named Golden, Golden, Franks, found her. Well, I think somebody knew where she was, but they were protecting her. Anyway, she wanted to surrender, but she didn't know who to surrender to, because she was from Beaufort County, and that was a small county, and she just didn't. So anyway, my boss and a civil rights leader called Golden, by the name of Golden Franks, brought her in. So after that, a lady by the name of Velma Hopkins out of Winston-Salem, Marilyn Palmer was a senator. She just died last month, as a matter of fact. And Miss Hopkins had died years ago. And myself, we and a couple of more women organized what was called the Concerned Women for the Fairness to Joanne Little. And what we did was supported the family of Joanne Little when they would bring her up to visit Joanne, try to help raise funds, raise funds for legal defense monies, to help defray the cost of her legal expenses. And then after she was acquitted, we still maintained our organization, and we changed the name to Concerned Women for Justice. And so we decided to branch out in different counties in the state. And we started off with about 19 chapters, and even up as far as Surrey County, that's up toward the mountains. And so, we did a lot of things with them as well.
Why was it? What was the reason behind this organization being an organization consisting of women? What does a woman being a woman mean in this case of fighting injustices? Like, is because we know you're involved in Democratic Women of Franklin County,
Mm-hmm.
and this is also another women's branch. So, is there a specific reason why you're involved in women's organizations, or?
Well, I've never set out to necessarily be a part of women's organizations or try to head them up or do anything with them. It's just maybe because I guess endearing of women, or the endearment of that. But it's I guess I was just prone and pulled toward women. But say, for example, capital punishment was not a woman's issue. More men on death row than women. It's just so happens that that's just this causes I ended up involved in. Nothing in particular other than quite often I think women need more, we as women need more help, and in terms of support system, and we are the people who have the children. So a lot of times when women get in trouble or need assistance, they need it for their whole family, and especially for the children. And I think that that's how I see it. I never really thought that much about why, but I just knew it was just something that was needed, especially needed for women. So
I have a question. It sounds a little bit like you're saying your passion when you're in activism is criminal justice and working with wrongly accused and capital punishment. But how does that really, and your mother's track has been voting rights, so do you think you share your mother's track of voting rights, justice as well? Or do you see that the criminal justice work is more your particular passion?
Well, my mother's track has pretty much been voting rights, but not necessarily. My mother has been, I think I've followed my mother and been with her a lot on lots of issues. Desegregation. She's tried to start a school, to buy the school in Youngsville, my old elementary school, to start a school. She's been for prison. She helped to. There was an organization called Gethsemane Rainbow, and I helped organize that. It was a home set up in Raleigh on Person Street to assist female ex-offenders who were just coming out of prison, who needed some extra help in getting back on their feet. And what they could do is stay in this home for 6 months if they needed to try to, and we just charge them a minimum amount to stay there. I think it was $30 a week. We would help them find jobs, and my mother was a part of that. She went to a hotel in Henderson, and my mother's very resourceful, and I don't know how she ended up over there, but anyway, they were renovating a hotel, the Holiday Inn. And she asked them if she could get some of that furniture that they were going to discard. And they said, oh, yeah, if you can get a truck. And somehow she found somebody with a truck, and they carried it to Raleigh. And we set up, and we called that the Concerned Women for Justice room. And then she then you had the Armenta Eaton room. But all the furniture came, but 2 or 3 sets of the furniture still came from the Holiday Inn. But, and to answer your question in a roundabout way, I pretty much have a passion for anything and any issue, even though I can't branch out on every issue. Is any issue that's relates to injustices. So it's just not one thing that I've been involved in. It's actually not just one thing she's been involved in all during my life, but it's just lately in later years is what she's been involved in. So I share pretty much the same passions as she does. And in terms of voting rights, I feel that, and I know this, not just feeling, that voting rights is important to everyone and their future, the future of them, the future of their children, the future generations to come. Because if you don't get the proper, the person in office that is going to look out for your interest as much as possible, then voting determines how your pattern of life, other than what God provides. And he says to run unto Caesar what is Caesar, and to God what's God. So he knows that you're going to need Caesar meaning, the government, to they're going to rule over you. So whomever you get to rule over you, you need to make sure, if at all possible, that that's a person that their attitudes and their desires aligns with yours as much as possible. And so that's why it's important for people. You can't elect the proper people to govern you if you're not registered to vote, and if you don't vote for those people. It's up to someone else to put those people in office. So that's why we know that voting and voting rights is so important. Too many people died for the right to vote, and they knew how important it is to vote. So that's why they sacrificed their lives in order that other people might have that right to vote.
Also, we're really wondering, because you're a plaintiff in the case.
Yes.
And we don't know your story you're presenting in the case, like at court. How are you being affected by this voter ID law?
Well, the part that I haven't testified yet, now not in court, but I have done a deposition for the attorneys in the event that I have to testify if we go back to court. And we will appeal if the case doesn't turn out in our favor, and the other side has said the same thing. But my position has been that the soft rollout was one of the situations that I dealt with pretty much people. Okay, when they decided that they were going to pass this law, and they said, it's one of the positions that the General Assembly took, was that they would let people know how that this was coming down the pike, and they would have this soft rollout, and that people would be told that they would have to have an ID in 2016 in order to vote. So I went around different polling sites in our county in 2015 to see how the soft rollout was to be administered. Well, I didn't find that I found that every site had their own method, and some sites had no method. But my concern is, I don't believe that you necessarily have to have an ID in order to vote, because you attest, when you register to vote, you attest to who you are. And that's a felony if you lie on when you register to vote. Or when you come in to vote, you still sign the roll book saying who you are. Now, I've taken a lot of people to the polls in my lifetime, because that was another passion that I had, making sure that people got to the polls. And I had certain people that I would always take, because for some strange reason they didn't have transportation for one thing, but then they would feel intimidated for some strange reason when they would go into the polling site. I never knew why, but anyway, they were more comfortable with me. Some of the elderly people that I knew in those days, so they would be more comfortable with me going in with them. But I have never in my life heard one person say that they wanted to go back and vote again. So I don't see it voter fraud being an issue in North Carolina. And so the General Assembly is saying that, we are trying to avoid voter fraud. I have never even heard any of my friends say, or any of the people I know say that, such and such wanted to vote twice. No, people just want to get in and get out for some strange reason. I don't know. They feel a little intimidated about being in the polls. And so my thing is, we have to have a free and open society in order to vote. But the voter ID is not the main focus that I have contention with. These other laws that were put under the voter ID law that was designed, I'm sure, to suppress the vote. So it has nothing to do with voter fraud, such as no out of precinct voting, such as no registration. You can't register and vote on the same day on election day. What does fraud have to do with shortening early days of voting? And all of the things that they've put in place for the sake of fraud, they say to the public, any person who has any common sense, who knows the other impediments that they put in place, knows that that's not the case. And so I just couldn't sit idly by and just not put my 2 cents worth in, to do whatever I could in order to protest these laws. And which protest is not uncommon to me anyway, because actually not protesting would be uncommon to me. Because I did it when I worked for the Commission for Racial Justice. I did it through the environmental justice movement down in Warren County, where I was arrested, I think 2 or 3 times down there. 3 times down there. That was back in, I think it was 82 or 88, when I can't remember. I've been through so many changes in my life, I can't remember the years. So if it's a movement, then if I think it's something that I need to do my part in, and I'm all for it. So that's why I became a plaintiff in this lawsuit. I had been arrested, and I had actually been a part of a protest in May of 2013 in Raleigh, inside the legislative building. And then later on, when they were asking for plaintiffs, who anybody was interested in being a plaintiff, then I was one of those that stepped up to be a plaintiff in the lawsuit.
So they were searching for people who wanted to be plaintiffs, and you volunteered? Or
yes, I don't know how hard they were searching or anything like that, but I heard Dr. Barber mention it, and I just stepped up to the plate. Matter of fact, I called him on the phone and said that I would be a plaintiff.
Your mother became a plaintiff the same way, or?
I think he called here and asked if she was interested in being a plaintiff, because at that time we didn't know that they were even getting a lawsuit together. And she said, "Oh, definitely she wanted to be a plaintiff." Because see, my mother, I don't think she had any intentions when I got arrested that she had any intentions of getting arrested. I mean, of getting in the protest and engaging in civil disobedience. Because when I left here going to Raleigh, she didn't even know I was gone. I left a note and said, "Gone to participate in the protest." And the Moral Monday protest, because they had only one Moral Monday protest, and that was in April. Mm-hmm. And I saw it on the news, and I saw some of my old buddies. I thought, "Oh, what is going on?" So I paid attention to what was going on. So Nelson Johnson, Kojo Nantambu, he's from Wilmington. He wasn't a part of Wilmington 10, but he was there. I don't know how he didn't end up being part of Wilmington 10, but he ended up being in the riots down in Wilmington. And I saw some more people. See, Dr. Barber is younger, much younger than I am. So the people that I saw were older, like John Mendez out of Winston-Salem. And I thought, oh man, what is going on? And then, and Irv Joyner, he's a professor at North Carolina Central, a law professor. And it was on television. I said, oh Lord. So I called one of them. They said, I thought we had gotten everybody the message. And I said, well, no. So I think that was April 29th of 2013. And so the next protest was May 6th. So I was gone. You know, I had got my days mixed up. I was thinking it was going to be on Tuesday, but it was actually on Monday. And I got in this email, and I thought, oh my God, it's 3:00. It's today. And so I took a bath, jumped ready, and put some pills in my pocket because my high blood pressure medicine in case I had to stay overnight, whatever, just in case I got arrested. So I put those in my pocket, put my little bottle of water, wrote my mother a note because she was taking a nap and says, go on to Raleigh to protest. And so that was off to Raleigh. And when I got there, they had done, you do an orientation before, if you think you're going to participate in civil disobedience, if you even have an idea that you might, then the NAACP gives you an orientation so that you won't be totally surprised, for certain things that may happen to you. When I got there, I had to find the church. I was already late, didn't know what was taking place. I got there, the orientation was over, but I didn't care. So they were getting ready to go to downtown to Jones Street in front of the legislative building. So they said, Armenta, you're late. I said, okay, whatever. So I caught a ride with somebody because I was going to leave my car at the church, and we got down there, and Dr. Barber did a prayer, and we went into they said, everybody who may engage in civil disobedience, come up front. So I was one of those that came up front, no orientation or whatever, but I had been arrested before, so I figured they wasn't going to eat me alive, so I've survived whatever, So anyway, so we got on it, and he said, well, go in by twos. And this tall gentleman, just as tall as David is, he came beside me, and he grabbed my hand. He said, can I walk with you? I said, oh, yes, sir. And he said, I thought it was joking. He said, I'm scared to death. And I said, well, weren't you at the orientation? He said, yes, ma'am, I was, but I'm still scared to death. And I said, well, what are you afraid of? And we were walking on in, and he said, I just don't know what to expect. I said, well, didn't they tell you what to expect in the orientation? He said, yes, but I still don't know what to expect. So I said, okay. He said, now you're not going to leave me, are you? I said, no, I don't have any place to go. And he said, and every so many feet, that man would say to me, you're not going to leave me, are you? And I said, no, just hold my hand, sir, just whatever. And when we got ready to go upstairs, because we walked to the second floor, he barely turned my hand loose to make the steps. He was scared to death. Because he did not leave home with any intentions of getting involved. He just can't come into a rally. But he was so upset because there was going to be something affecting his daughter. I can't remember what he said that the legislature had done. It was enacted some law, and I can't remember what it was. And so he got upset and angry, and he came to Raleigh and participated in protests. And so he was with us the whole time until they separated us. When we got arrested, the men from the women, they had to sit on one side at the detention center, and the men. So I said, and he would look over at me. I said, you over there in good company? You over there with all those ministers? You're fine. And then later on, he just kind of relaxed, and he was okay. He's very sick now. I heard from him a couple of weeks ago, but he went into bad health or whatever. But anyway, so then I was later arrested this past June, I believe it was. So that hasn't been resolved yet. That was they threw it the first arrest out of court, but the one that where I was arrested last June, that still hadn't been resolved. We just keep going back and forth to court, So I don't know how that will turn out with that one. So.
Do you remember the first time you were arrested? Were you nervous then?
Pause just 1 second. Sorry. Hold on.
In life?
Yeah.
Or with this protest?
No, in your whole life. You know, you're describing a younger man who was holding your hand, and when you
that was in 2013.
Right.
But when I say in life, I mean I was arrested in Warren County.
Right. Was that the first time you were arrested? Was in Warren County?
Yes.
Were you scared back then, or?
No, I wasn't afraid. Let's see. I don't remember what year it was. I guess it was in '88. I can get back with y'all with that. On that in terms of the date, or the year anyway. I can't even remember. It was because they had dumped some PCBs on the side of the road. Someone from New Jersey, they said, and the Governor Hunt had instructed the state of North Carolina to erect a dump for the PCBs in Warren County, in the black community, Warren County, and predominantly black community, about 98% black. And that's when it started, what it was called the environmental justice movement. It started pretty much in Warren County at that time. And it was called the PCB movement in Warren County. And I think if you were on the road, if I remember, if you impeded the truck when they were scraping the roadside scraping the dirt up, which they would call themselves getting the PCB, and they were carrying it to the dump. If you were found in the road and didn't get out of the road so that the trucks could pass, then they would charge you with impeding traffic. And so there were lots of us, out there. So it really wasn't anything to be afraid of. I mean, you just, highway patrolman just put you in a paddle bus and hauled you off to jail. And I think in the first time I was arrested, I was bonded out right away. So I didn't spend any time in there. Then the second time, I was arrested with a bunch of men, and they put the men down the hall, and they put me in, I guess that must have been isolation, because it was like a vault, as I remember, like a big vault. There was a room, and they didn't close the door, I don't believe. She didn't lock the door or something. Anyway, I heard my boss down the hall, I remember. And I got up from a little cart I was on, and I went down the hall and started talking to the men that were in jail. And the jailer, which was a woman, Miss Somerville, I believe her name was, she said, "Why are you down here?" I said, "Well, you didn't lock the door, so I just thought I would come down here and talk." She said, "No, you go back, and I will lock the door." So she locked me in there. So I remember saying, "Are these sheets clean on this big cart?" She said, "Yes." I said, "You changed it from the last criminal that was in here?" And she said, "Yes." I said, "Oh, okay. Well, in that case, I'll take a nap because I am tired." So that was so no, I was not afraid. And then I think I stayed in there about 6 or 7 hours, and then they let me go. And then the third time in Warren County, I was arrested. There were a bunch of us, a lot of people that day. Oh, my mother, I don't know how she managed not to get arrested, because she was standing in the middle of the road. And they were picking up people. See, we were lying in the road. Maybe that's the difference. She was standing up, running her mouth. and the officer was just picking all of us up, taking us to the paddy wagon, and they never bothered her. And you know where she was? She had gotten out from a lunch hour. She taught in Youngsville School. She had asked her principal, could she get off? And they didn't really have real lunch hours. Teachers don't. So she got off, And she came to Warren County, stand up there running her mouth in the middle of the road. We all lying around. When they hauled me, I was saying, Mother, go back to work. Go back to work. She was, I don't know what she was saying, but anyway, she didn't even think about that they could have arrested her. I think she thought because she was standing up in the middle of the road instead of lying down. But anyway, and she would do that on days. She would duck out of work. She would tell the principal. He knew about it. She had a really nice principal. He would let her come down and protest, come on back, and like nothing had happened. So, yeah, and so that time, I think there were 5 of us ended up being locked up in a cell and stayed overnight because Mrs. Evelyn Lowry, who was the wife, she since died, the wife of the head of the SCLC, Southern Christian Leadership Conference, Dr. Lowry's wife. She came. Dr. Lowry came. Representative Fontroy came from D.C. Evelyn Lowry and them, they would have come from Atlanta. And she wanted to call attention to what we were trying to do down here. So she said, if I stay overnight, then some of my colleagues, it'll go all around this country that I got locked up in Warren County. So in order to bring some more attention to help here, I'll be willing to stay overnight if someone would stay with me. And so Dolly Burwell, Floyd McKissick's daughter, and another lady, I can't remember her name, Miss Lowry and myself, we stayed overnight. And then the newspapers, they covered the story, and just like Miss Lowry said, it just went like wildfire after that. So people were coming from everywhere protesting. Even students from Chapel Hill. That's why I met a neighbor of mine. I didn't know it at that time, but he found out later. He said, well, didn't you get arrested in Warren County some years ago? And I said, yes. And he said, I was a student that came from UNC Chapel Hill, and I was arrested too, but he was a student. So anyway, so no, I've never been afraid when I got arrested because I'm assuming I'm going to try to behave myself, and I'm assuming that the arresting officers will, do the proper thing of what they are required to do. So no, I've never been afraid. I've never been afraid of a whole lot anyway.
We can tell you're a really strong person, like emotionally and mentally.
I have a question. You were describing like the Warren County PCB movement and like the movement to free Ben Chavis and the Wilmington 10, which had a really clear racial intent behind the injustice that was going on. So do you see this case, the 2013 voter ID law, as having a clear racial injustice, like a clear intent towards racial injustice?
I believe the intent of this bill is to foster the ability of the people who are in the legislature, which is predominantly Republicans, to maintain Republican control of the General Assembly. And once they maintain control and have a great majority, like they do have, then they can pass laws that have racial injustice intent. Just like with the HB Bill 2, they can just pass everything, and then they put under that bill laws that's designed for people not to be able to defend themselves in court against unfair practices and on their job, such as racial profiling or racial injustices or on their jobs, and then you can't take them to courts in North Carolina, and that's what we used to do when I worked for the Commission for Racial Justice, and we would send people to EOC in Raleigh, Equal Employment Opportunities Commission, or we would handle cases that we thought that people were unjustly treated on the job because of their race. But I mean, it's to me it's a snowball effect. If they stay in power, then they can pass laws that would intentionally be prejudiced against races, and not only just races, against different types of people. So that's what it's all about, because they make the laws. And that's why I say voting is so important. And that's why my mother feels it's so important. And we feel like everybody should realize how important it is, because in 2010, if people hadn't let their guard down and been paying attention and gotten out to vote like they should have, the Republicans wouldn't have slipped in. And said once they've slipped in, gotten in, even though they're talking about fraud, then they must have gotten in through fraud. Had they thought about that, if people were committing fraud, then they should be all happy, because in 2010, there was a lot of fraud committed as far as they would be concerned, and they got in. So that didn't hold water, but not to me. But yeah, it would have racial intents and racial overtones, and taking monies from all these charter schools and private schools, and taking money from the public schools, giving it to the private schools. To me, that's a way of initiating segregation within the school system. So it's just another way. The same old intent is just another way of doing it. So when I was growing up, you see, once you live long enough, you see things changing, but still remaining the same, or going back to the same old ways, just in through a different prism. But just like my mother was standing when I was eating, and she was standing there at the counter at the bar, and she just said, and she's usually not quiet, but that day I didn't hear anything, and all of a sudden I heard this little small voice say, this is all turning back the way it was before I can get in the grave. It was like, if I could only get in the grave before this happened, I wouldn't. And I looked up at her, and she was just looking so sad, And a lot of elderly people, I'm sure, feel that way. And I'm not to consider the elderly, but to you all I might be. But you look at it and say, well, what on earth was all of this about that we were fighting for all of these years? And then it's just another way of the establishment coming back doing the same old thing. And I can see why my mother was so sad about it. All of this is coming back, because when you live through Jim Crow, segregation, integration, and then it's segregating under the cover again, and I mean, and I've lived through segregation, integration, and then this is another type. And then it seems like a lot of people don't realize that if a history forgotten is bound to be repeated. And so therefore, if people don't know their history, and they need to be vigilant and be aware of different methods of repeating history through another door, they won't even know what hit them. When especially these younger people and middle-aged people too, they won't know how they got to where they are, because it's not going to look the same.
It's going to look like the past, more like the past, right?
Mm-hmm. It won't look exactly like the past, but it'll be. But at least in the past, you knew. Mm-hmm. You knew because you had white only, black only, whatever. It was obvious, so it was right there in your face. But if it's a fog, like you won't know what has happened. And a lot of these bills that are passed, people just think, oh, this is HB. Just an example, this is voter ID. It has very little to do with voter ID. or HB2, transgender, whatever. It's just like last night, it was a gentleman that he is on the board of election. He doesn't know. He said, what is all this hoopla about this HB2 and people protesting? So we said, well, let's tell you what we know about it. Then he said, oh, I didn't know all that, this, that, and the other. And, you know, he was an older gentleman. He's older than I am, but he didn't know that that the General Assembly can put all kinds of bills under one with a certain topic and a heading, and you think, oh, well, that's what that's about, and that doesn't affect me. So we have to be vigilant and research and everything, because with this General Assembly, they're just tricking us every way they can. So you have to stay on it, stay up on it, else you'll miss out. You don't even know what hit you, blindsided. So I feel sorry for the younger people that may be coming up that's going to be blindsided. Mm-hmm.
So what if you don't win this case? What are the stakes in for you if you don't win this court case?
Well, if you don't win the case, ultimately, people will have to be educated more and more. And as people come along, hopefully they will adapt to the new laws. And, laws can be reversed. It depends upon who you get into. So my job, as I see it for the rest of my life, is continuing to work for social justice, civil rights, voting rights, and so forth, and to get people back in the office that think more about the people and not just staying in office, holding power to turn back the clock, turn back the hand, because I don't want the hand of social injustice, racial injustice to be turned back. So we just got to try to regain some of the momentum that we've lost, and then try to educate other people that they need to do the same for their generations. I don't have children, so anything that I'm doing is for the generation here and the ones coming behind me. My mother doesn't have any more children. She has some grandchildren, but I'm the only child that's left. My siblings are dead, so she has grandchildren. But anything that I do is for someone else. I figure I'm almost, in a few months I'll be 6 or 7 years old. If other people can deal with it, I guess I can escape in to heaven, and somehow make it. But it's for the people coming, like you all, it's coming behind us. How is life going to be for you? Everything is so expensive. Things just hopefully be made a little bit easier for you instead of harder for you. And I think with the people we have in the General Assembly now, from the top to the bottom, from Washington all the way down, they're looking to make things harder for certain people, not easier for certain people. I'm not saying you need to go around life with everything being easy, but for deliberately making things harder, and life is hard as it is, then in and of itself, it's just, I think it's just cruel for people to do that just for a few people, and the masses of the people are going to be left out.
Do you have a feeling if you think you're going to win or not this case?
Well, I don't know what we're going to do with this I don't know what that judge is doing with this long ruling, writing his decision. But I would feel ultimately, it may take years, but I think ultimately we'll win. I do. I think that whomever wins in the middle district whoever loses they've already said that they will appeal. So it'll be just appeal, and we will appeal if we lose. So we'll appeal until we don't have any other measures. And then, but I believe ultimately that whether I be here to live and to see it or not, it's a different story. But I think that, ultimately we'll win. Mm-hmm.
I hope so too.
I hope so.
And you say you lost your momentum, like sort of lost your momentum over the years, and that's why like Republicans got like sneaked in to the.
Yeah, I think people did lose their momentum and their interest.
But like when is the time like to like you constantly there's an issue and you're working all your life, like your mother has worked all her life, you're working all your life for this cause, and like current like our generation, there are like kids our age who are still working some for this cause. But when is it time to like, I know it's not as soon, like it's not going to be soon to stop, but can't you just like feel like you achieved it? Like I know you can't, but don't you feel tired?
Oh yeah, we feel tired. Yeah, I feel tired, very tired.
Do you ever want to give up? Like
Sometimes I want to give up, but I don't feel that I should give up. And then it's just sometimes I just have low days, but not often. But I can't. I've done it so long. I'm not sure I would know how to just be a regular person who don't take interest in issues. So I don't know how I would feel, really. It's an unknown charted territory for me. So it's not something that I really want to do, but it's just the times when you get a little discouraged. And we don't get as discouraged with the system, because I know people are going to always try to get over on you and do evil. That's just the way the world is set up, but good and bad. But my faith tells me I have to keep going. My faith in God, because he said, I was hungry and you fed me. I was naked and you clothed me. I was in prison and you came to see me. And the disciples said, well, when did we do this? He said, when you did the least to the least of these, you would have done it unto me. So that stays in the back of my mind. So I still have to keep working. It's just that I kind of get discouraged with people who maybe don't have the same passion or the same desire to work on their own behalf of their children. But that usually doesn't last long. That doesn't last long. Or somebody may say something that's, to me, they're just not keeping up. And so I said, well, this is going to have to be a teaching moment. So like Sunday night, some relatives of ours came to visit my mother because of her eye surgery, and they just didn't know a lot about what was going on. So we used that time to explain a lot to them. So, I wasn't angry that they didn't know. I was just really thankful for the opportunity, and my mother too. She was kind of slow when they got here, because she was just getting up and from taking her nap, but she was wide open, boy. Any teaching moment she can get, man, she's right on it. So we sat in that den and we just gave them a history lesson. So they left there, and so I said, now you all are going to volunteer with us, right? And because we got to be working on election stuff. And then, we're gonna help. We're gonna do what we can. So I jetted back in the room, wrote their name after they left, wrote it down. So I'm compiling my list of volunteers, because we've got to make some changes in our legislators and our governorship and whatever. So that would help me a whole lot. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that would get my momentum built back up. Now in 2010, my momentum was up and my mother's momentum was up, because she kept that headquarters open from 9 in the morning to 9 at night. And she would make phone calls, this and that. She pretty much coordinated that. I would be out in the streets. We would go from church to church on Sundays. We would ask the pastor if we could come, and we would talk to them about the importance, because we knew that it was the year for redistricting. And if Republicans got in, they were going to draw the maps just like they did. And some people would say, especially black people would say, well, we got President Obama in. I said, he can't do one cotton thing up there in Washington, D.C. without a cabinet that's going to help him. So I said, just forget President Obama's up there, other than he's up there, but he needs your help. And you can help by making sure that you go out and vote, and not only just you vote, you make sure that you be a committee of one to get other people involved. Make sure your household, your church members, so forth. I said, this is going to be the most important. I would tell people in church, because I was really passionate about that. I said, this is going to be, for most of you in here, this is going to be the most important year of your lifetime. And we have got to get people in office and make sure that they stay down and I said, that people are mad because President Obama is in there. I said, and the Tea Party's come out and they've been drinking tea ever since. And we've got to make sure that he has a cabinet that he can work with. But people just, for some reason, a lot of white people would tell us on the phone or in person, well, there's just a sorry bunch up there. I just don't want any of them to be up there. So they would vote for a Republican. One lady said, oh, I know my son will never get Social Security. I said, well, you're going to vote for John May to go to for the General Assembly for Senate? Oh, no, I'm not voting for him. Well, why are you not voting for him? I asked one lady. Because I'm just not voting for any Democrats. And so it was, we would run into that all the time. And I'm saying, you're just hurting yourself. And the lady just said that, she was talking about her son was in a bad way. And and so they were mad, And so the black folks, they got complacent, a lot of them, because President Obama was in. It's like, oh, well, so then in 2010, that all slipped out of our hands.
That person you were just describing to talking on the phone was a white person.
Yes, it was a white lady.
Right. So has there been alliance between poor whites and black people trying to motivate?
Not that I can determine. Mm-mm. Not in this county. And I'm very active in the political process here because I hold 3 offices. Democratic Women's Vice Chair, Democratic Party, Second Vice, and the African American Caucus of the Democratic Party, Second Vice. And I do not see in any alliance at all between poor white people and we're trying to reach out to Hispanics, but they seem to shy away from everybody in this county. Mm-hmm. Republicans, Democrats, whatever. They don't. You can't get them to get involved.
Why doesn't that alliance happen? What's preventing that alliance?
What's preventing it?
Well, a multiracial alliance between poor whites and blacks, Hispanics and blacks. Is there an alliance that's being prevented?
I think with the Hispanics and blacks, it's perhaps a language barrier or a fear of getting involved, for Hispanics getting involved in local politics, especially when you're in a little small county like this. And I don't know what the problem is with the poor white people and the blacks. I don't know if we're not reaching out to each other as we should, or because poor whites feel that Hispanics and blacks are taking the same old scenario, saying that they've always had, that we're taking the jobs and we're doing this, that, and other. Well, we're not taking, certainly black people are not taking the jobs, period. I know that for a fact. But so I don't know. It's not much different now than it was before, and they're still driving their Confederate flags on the back of their trucks. And so I don't see it getting better. I think it's getting worse, to be honest, because they will align themselves with the Tea Party before. And I don't know if it's a matter of ignorance or a matter of prejudice or both. I just know what it is. but it seems like they don't do things to help themselves when we're all in the same boat, except for wealthy people. So I really don't know, can't say what the problem is. Or, I'm not blaming anyone, any race or any group of people. I just do not know.
So maybe can it be like because of education or communication, lack of communication?
I think it's both.
Both. And
Lack of communication probably first problem, and then perhaps education.
And
especially with Hispanics, it would be communications for sure.
yeah. Because it's interesting. Every community is really separated, and maybe do you ever think education of poor white folks or like increasing the communication between communities might help? Or
I think it would help a lot if you could break that barrier. Whatever the screen is up, or what or the barrier that keeps us from a dialogue between the races. And I don't know if, say for example, I'll just take for example in the political Democratic Party, for example. I know we tried to get Hispanics involved, but that hasn't worked so far. But we have not reached out to extremely poor white people, perhaps like we should. And I don't know if it's because of a fear of doing it, or we just hadn't thought about doing it. But I think that would need to be done, probably reaching out to white people would need to be done by white people.
Mm-hmm.
In this county for sure would have to be done, and they don't seem in the circles that I travel in. It pretty much half and half. Half white and half black in terms of the different organizations I'm involved in. But it seems like the whites don't want to reach out to Hispanics nor poor whites. It's just most of the black people talking about Hispanics, but we don't know really how to reach out or break that barrier with poor whites. I don't know if it's because we know them more in terms of their history, and with Hispanics we don't have a history, and that we're more susceptible or more likely or more amenable to talking with Hispanics if the language barrier wasn't up. So, because I know me personally, I would just soon rather probably, if I saw a white person with a Confederate flag on his truck, on his cap, and I saw a Hispanic man here, I think I would rather approach the Hispanic because of my history than the one with the Confederate flag.
Oh yeah.
And you see a lot of that, you see a lot of it here. But I don't get, only time I see Hispanics are in the grocery stores or somewhere like that,
I'm interested in, you mentioned your faith giving you strength to continue in these movements. And it seems confusing to me that a lot of the lawmakers in the other side of the case also claim to be motivated by faith, by their Christian faith. Do you have any thoughts on that? On what's going on there?
Well, I have some thoughts, but I don't know if I should share them. It's and my mother and I talk about it sometimes. They'll say I'm conservative, but to me, when you say you're conservative, I have two definitions of conservatism. If you're white and you say I'm a conservative, to me, you could be one or both of these. You could, and just in my mind, it's just in my poor mind, is that you want, but you don't want others to have, and you're supposed to be a Christian. So to me, you're just a Christian racist. And that's just the way I see it. Um, and I hear that because I go to an integrated church, so I hear that a lot about conservatism and this and that, and one of our ministers' son was on Medicaid, but he was always down in Medicaid. Then I found out his son was on Medicaid because he had a handicapped son, and I said, "Well, you've been talking ugly about people who are on Medicaid, and your son is on Medicaid." Yeah, he says, "But I know what to do with my Medicaid funding, and other people don't." And I said, "Well, you have one nerve to say that when you acting like other people don't know what to do with their Medicaid benefits, and you do. So do you think Medicaid was set up just for you? So the whole world, you're the only one who knows what to do with the Medicaid benefits, and it's just you. So it was set up years ago, just waiting for you." So, and he never did answer that. But we run into that a lot, especially in our circles. And see, we're getting more people on the other side that we deal with, because so many people are moving into Franklin County from some other state. And they are usually Republican. They're
Why
usually
do you
Republican.
think that's immigration is like? Why do you think people are moving here?
Well, they're moving to Franklin County because they can't afford to live in Wake County. They come from other states because the living is easier, they've heard, to come to North Carolina. So they're everywhere in North Carolina. But when they come to the larger cities like Raleigh, Charlotte, and Winston-Salem, well, we're closer to Raleigh. We're 30 miles from Raleigh. And so they come to Wake County. If they can't get in Wake County, they spill over to Franklin County. And we are on the southern end of Franklin County, which we're closer to Wake than, say, if you were east of Louisburg. It looks pretty much the same down there. It's not a lot of rooftops, as they say, and that's how they devise the tax codes, by the rooftops. So we have more rooftops up here. And the people who are moving in from all over, just all over the country, they are mostly Republicans. So we would have we had a few Republicans in our neighborhood, but they wouldn't let you know they were Republicans when I was growing up. See? And after I got older, that you didn't know that they were Republicans because they were so isolated. They didn't have very many other Republicans, so they didn't really let you know that they were Republicans. So, but now, since they have so many comrades who are Republicans, they don't mind letting you know that they are Republicans. People that's been here forever, they don't know. Now, a lot of time, my mother knew that they were Republicans because when they would come to vote, she worked on the polls. And in the primaries, you have to declare what you are. And sometimes they said, like one guy said, "Miss E, I just hadn't gotten around to change my party affiliation." He said, "That's up to you." But he was embarrassed. See, he was embarrassed to say he was a Republican. But see, now they're not embarrassed because you got so many other Republicans who have moved in. And so they have their friends, so they can say, well, they might even be their friends. There's just so many more Republicans in the county. I told Mother, Republicans gonna run the county, gonna run the state, period. And so, so that's how I feel about what you asking me, all around about way. So.
Did you ever want to move out of Franklin County? Like, did you ever want to move, to Raleigh or like?
No.
No?
I've never wanted to move out of Franklin County. Not for one day.
Why?
I was born and reared here. And to me, Raleigh, first of all, is a big city. I don't like city life. I can't stand cities. So I wouldn't want to move to a city. The only place I've ever maybe thought maybe moving was when I was in college. I wanted to move to the mountains when I got out. But then I realized, oh no, that's too cold in the mountains. What was I thinking? No, so no. I've never wanted to move anywhere. Just stay right here in Franklin County.
It's really beautiful here, though.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I never want to move anywhere.
Yeah.
Do you have any other questions?
I know. Do you?
Do you have anything else that you want to say about the case, or
Did we miss anything important, do you think?
Well, we are anxiously waiting the judge's ruling. And like I said, if we lose, we will appeal. And then we would appeal it to the federal courts. And we'll just keep fighting as long as we're able to do so. I will, and I believe my mother will as well. And fighting any other cases that are issues that we feel passionate about. And so I'm looking forward to getting a positive outcome sooner or later. We will be working on the elections, trying to get some of the people removed out of office who don't necessarily think like we do. And I'm glad to be a part of the voter ID case, be a plaintiff, to do my part, whatever. It can be very inconvenient sometimes. It can be very costly because the case was heard in Winston-Salem, so it can be costly to stay there for 3 weeks or 1 week or whatever. And but I think it's worth it. It's worth the effort, and so I'm glad to be a part of the effort to fight this case. And I'll be fighting as long as I can, and don't plan to give up. I may give out, but I don't plan to give up.